Welcome back, my friend. My name is Monica Esgueva. In today's deep dive, we are going to explore the fascinating intersection between Buddhism and modern psychology and their unique approaches to understanding and managing emotions. In Buddhism, mental afflictions disrupt the equilibrium of our minds. These are negative emotions and any mental process that leads us away from clarity, such as greed or anger. Due to its obvious destructive effects, anger is more straightforward to address, while greed is subtler. It's often masked by temporary pleasure, making it harder to recognize as problematic. Our society, which highly values material success, can exacerbate this, making us prone to overlook the fleeting nature of possessions and status. This concept resembles how a rangoon washes its food before eating it. The problem is that they will wash a sugar cube too, over and over, unable to learn. They don't see that it will not outlast the washing, and they will end up empty-handed. Similarly, humans tend to forget the transient nature of things, investing themselves in acquiring possessions, status, followers, etc., not realizing that this investment will not last. So you can still keep your ability to appreciate beautiful things and enjoy whatever you have. What changes is your emotional attachment to them. The difference between psychology and Buddhism is that while modern psychology focuses on identifying, managing, and expressing emotions constructively, Buddhism takes a broader view. It does not categorize mental processes into emotions and thoughts separately, but instead views all mental activities as potential contributors or detractors to our well-being. This approach encourages a more holistic monitoring of our mental state, promoting practices that increase our long-term happiness and reduce all inner suffering and distress. Funnily enough, recent neurological studies support the Buddhist assertion that emotions and cognitive processes are intertwined. Brain regions involved in emotional processing are also crucial for cognition, suggesting how we think can directly influence our feelings. This dual involvement underscores the complexity of our mental processes and aligns with the Buddhist philosophy that these are not separate, but part of a unified system of cognitive functioning. Other differences worth mentioning are how the goal of practices differ. Psychology typically aims to improve mental health by managing symptoms and fostering well-being within the individual. This often focuses on helping individuals adapt to their social and personal circumstances, while Buddhism seeks to achieve enlightenment. The practice is not only about personal well-being, but also about profound transformation and spiritual liberation. The second difference is the method of handling negative emotions. Psychology uses techniques like cognitive behavioral therapy to modify dysfunctional thinking and behavior, since emotions are something to be managed or regulated. On the other hand, Buddhism encourages observing emotions as they arise, understanding their nature, and ultimately realizing their emptiness. The goal is not to suppress emotions, but to transcend them through insight. I would say that the third one is ethical and moral dimension. The general approach of psychology is to avoid prescribing a specific moral code. It focuses more on the effectiveness of therapeutic interventions. However, in Buddhism, ethics are central to the practice, with moral codes integral to personal development and the path to enlightenment. Virtuous behavior is seen as essential to mental purity and spiritual progress. And last but not least is the very different understanding of happiness. Psychology usually views happiness as a state that can be achieved by fulfilling personal desires and improving life circumstances, while Buddhism considers true happiness to arise from inner peace and the cessation of aversion and desire. Happiness is not about acquiring things or even improving conditions, but about developing a state of detachment and contentment, regardless of external situations. I have always found that Buddhism's deep-rooted philosophies offer a unique lens through which we can understand our minds and emotions differently from modern psychology's more clinically oriented approaches. Now, let's see a couple of takeaways that you can put into practice right away. The first one is to cultivate mindfulness so that we can clearly understand what's happening in our minds at any given moment. This practice teaches us to observe our thoughts and emotions without attachment, allowing us to respond to life's challenges with wisdom rather than react out of habit. And the second one is decentering from emotional narratives instead of ruminating thoughts non-stop. We can decenter from our reactive patterns by focusing on physical sensations associated with emotions, rather than the stories we tell ourselves about those emotions. This practice can prevent us from adding fuel to the fire, and instead lead to a more measured and thoughtful responses. The other thing we can do is implement an understanding of the root causes of our emotional reactions right away. If you haven't watched the 2 previous episodes I dedicated to the Noble Eightfold Path, you can do it later. It will give you tools to break your reactivity and help you with your inner growth. Remember that the 4 noble truths point out that our distress often stems not from external circumstances, but from our own reactions to them. By realizing that much of our emotional turmoil comes from internal narratives and past experiences, we can begin to unravel these stories and approach our present experiences with a fresh perspective. This is all for today. If you want to continue delving into these profound truths, I will suggest that you read The 7 Levels of Wisdom. Thank you for being here with me today.